We good?
Yeah.
Brandon, everything good?
Camera's running.
Everyone ready?
Everyone.
Good? Pardon?
Yep.
Alright. Let's begin. Framework point 1. Fiat is an illusionary mechanism used in combination with the hypothetical implementation of a plan to end the interrogation of a policy representation of the resolution. Point 2 is the right to define. Under the version first, the affirmative has the right to define the words of the resolution as well as the plan exercise. Point 3. Competitive equity. The affirmative firmly holds the ability to hold the only advocacy and around any argument that's proposed an alternative method to solving for the affirmative is uniquely harmful to our ability to uphold our burden. Being bound to an unconditional advocacy is key to competitive equity. Since the affirmative is bound to the limits of the resolution, this means that the negative finding an alternative method to solving outside the bounds of the resolution is a unique reason for them to be voted down. Point 4. This round is a policy round. Subpoint A is that policy making encompasses the lens of both fact and value, therefore it is the best way to view this round. Subpoint B is any naive arguments trying to shift away from this uniquely good form of education will cause the loss of the ability to critically assess policy making. Point 5 is that we as the affirmative have an ethical obligation to reject capitalism, and for the role of the ballot is to vote for the team who best upholds its obligation. Point 6 is that value and fact-based rounds do not uphold this burden because policy uniquely provides a solution and a means to identify the justifications for the deconstruction of capitalism. Plan. Democratic socialism should be implemented worldwide. Advantage 1. Cap bad framework. Democratic socialism moves a mindset and anti-capitalism into the piece which rears down the establishment and prevents oligarchy. A is the uniqueness. Capitalistic value inherent currently an establishment of the oppression and violence. Subpoint A into this is that the unending drive for capitalism will always expand marginalized populations for the capitalistic gain. Link, plan passes implementing democratic socialism worldwide. Internal link. Without plan, capitalistic mindsets continues to drive for the capital. Internal link 2. Continual drive for money will result in genocide of marginalized communities. Point 3 is that things valued over human life lead to the dehumanization of this human life. Dehumanization is the root cause for all other, is the internal link for all other impacts, and dehumanization is the means for justification for the atrocities that are led to the violence and fetishization against minorities and minority groups. Advantage 2. State bad, or state good. Framework. The state created the structures of capitalism, meaning they are the only way to truly deconstruct capitalism. A is the uniqueness. The state is what inherent entrenches capitalism. Point 2 under this is that the state has the power to resurrect it.
No.
To what? Reject it. There we go. The link. Plan passes implementing democratic socialism worldwide. Internal link is that without plan, state continues capitalism. Point 2 under this is that the deconstruction leads to and no reform will happen because capitalism will still ensue. Point 3 under this is that no checkback for capitalism means its inevitable extinction through environmental deconstruction. The impact of this is the extinction of humanity and life on Earth. At the point where we can't deconstruct capitalism, it leads to the inherent extinction of humanity because the only way to deconstruct capitalism and the entrenchment of capitalism is to use the state, which allows for the eventual deconstruction of capitalism. Advantage 3. Oh, I actually got through this fast enough. I thought I would. Democratic socialism. Uniqueness. Under the current implementation of varying governments, minorities are pushed to the periphery due to a society based on classism. Point B is that classism is the root cause of dehumanization of minority communities. The link is that plan deconstructs a classist society worldwide by implementing democratic socialism. The internal link is that without plan, minorities are pushed outside of the pushed to the periphery, outside of the perspective of the white society and classism in and of itself. Point 2 is that without plan, dehumanization continues to rise. Impact of this is dehumanization. Cross-apply my articulation of dehumanization, that it's the internal link to all other impacts, which leads to the justification for the atrocities that occur to minority groups. The second impact is poverty. Under a classist society, people and specifically in the minority populations and communities are pushed into poverty and cyclical poverty because they have no means of getting out. As soon as we create a classist society where there's a separation of the majority minority groups, we create this distinction of an us-them dichotomy where these people are not able to afford living in the society, which means they're entrenched in poverty, which leads to the eventual systemic death of these groups. Okay. I'll save the rest of my time. I got through 3 advantages. I thought those were more writing on them than
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wish you would have told me that.
No,
I would
It's
have
also not fun to run state whatever that was and
cap and
Yeah, was it state good or state bad?
Oh, I could have run it if I knew that's what he wanted. I just didn't know. I thought he literally wanted me to run his damages. That's what I write for him. I'll write down word for word what I want. So
Ain't nobody got that time.
Yeah, that takes so much time.
All right, let's go.
How many off?
We are going to be going.
It's gonna be one off, right?
One less.
No.
one less.
17. Oh well.
No off, it's all on pace.
Alright, so we're
LP.
going to be going
That was the last round.
3 off.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any long?
Sure, no.
Depends on how you write.
Alright, so 3 off, and then we will be going on case in order.
Good call.
No, ready for this?
I was just gonna do it.
First sheet, object fiat. A is interpretation. Fiat extends to a transparent process. B is the violation. The opposition fiat's a mindset to generate solvency. C is the standards. Reciprocity. Their interpretation justifies fiating utopia. If this was justified, the government would always win by reading a plan text for utopia. This killing side debate, which is critical to education access. 2. Real abuse. It's impossible to debate because it provides a mechanism to evaluate internal links to arguments. 3. Real world. You can't justify change people's minds. You can't just change people's minds in the real world. You have to use a transparent process to create a mechanism for any change to the status quo. D is the voters. Abuse. Accessibility to ground is essential to debating within the game of debate. Artificial limits by the negative. Any violation by fiating a mindset should automatically garner the affirmative loss. Second sheet, tricop. Is a statement, which makes this a fact round, which means we must evaluate this round through the perspective of evidence to determine whether the statement is true. Violation. The affirmative ran this as a policy round. Standards. Grammar. Language is important. Language shapes the reality. Therefore, you should be looking at this through fact. Depth over breadth. By looking at this through the lens of facts as opposed to policy, we allow for more depth as opposed to just talking about a bunch of things that don't really correlate. Finally, framer's intent. Through the use of grammar, as in the word is, we can clearly see that the framer wanted this to be a fact round. Now let's take a look at the voters. This is an a priori voting issue. You should be voting here. I'll get you at the bottom of this. Finally, fairness. Without fairness, there is no point to this debate because that would be skewing us out of our education. Now, grammar and framer's intent are internal links to fairness. Now, let's take a look at education. That's the reason that we are doing this debate. If we don't get education out of it, then there is no point. And depth of breadth, grammar, framer's intent, all internal links to education. And finally, we will be evaluating this through complete interpretations. Yes, your question.
Just the framer.
The framer?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Let's take a look here at contention 1. Free market solves. Thesis. Capitalism is Capitalism, specifically free market capitalism, is uniquely the best way to lead to a more peaceful society. Because capitalism essentially is self-deprecating, because the more capitalism of the free market nature there is, the more people dislike it. The more people dislike it, the more people will be willing to reject capitalism, as opposed to essentially imposing a democratic society on them, at which point they would simply reject it. Now let's take a look at the Warren. The Warren, the Bolshevist Revolution. In Russia, this idea of quote-unquote democratic socialism was imposed on these people. And what happened? It collapsed because they rejected this idea of democratic socialism. Because it wasn't the people who put it on themselves, it was the bourgeois who imposed it on them. Now, implication. This leads to a less bloody transition to a more fair society. And a clear impact of this would be lives saved. Because a sudden shift to, for example, democratic socialism leads to this sort of turmoil that we saw during the Bolshevik Revolution, you're obviously going to be preferring free market capitalism over this idea of imposing democratic socialism on the people. Now let's take a look at the framework of point 2. Right to define should have the right to define, but we can clearly give counter-interpretation. We can challenge their definitions, and we can challenge their parametricization. 3. Primitives is the only advocacy. Not true. 4. Policy making. Policy encompasses fact and value. This is complete bullshit. Let's talk about all the policy that is introduced to the Congress every single day. Probably none of it is factual. Of all fact is policy, and by definition, all these for example, the policy of racism, which was introduced, by that definition, this idea of racism and the whites being superior to blacks would be a fact. So no, policy does not encompass fact. Now, 5, negative shifting. We're not shifting. We're simply actually upholding and debating the resolution as opposed to looking at this through policy. Now, let's take a look at their obligation of rejecting capitalism. They don't do this, as I will show you in their thingy here. Now, let's look at a first case argument. Uniqueness turn. This oppression by capitalism is good because it then enables the people to reject capitalism. Link. Democratic socialism imposed worldwide. Link turn. This leads to a form of violent revolt against socialism and other forms of peaceful transitions of power, as we saw during the Bolshevik Revolution. At that point, they have no internal link, and they actually cause their impact of dehumanization because these people are going to be given a form of government that they do not want. And that is inherently dehumanizing because it's showing them that they do not have a right to say how they want to be governed. Now let's take a look at their second advantage. Uniqueness, they created of capitalism, etc., etc. Uniqueness, stay entrenched in capitalism. Uniqueness turn, this is completely good because the state is entrenched in capitalism. This makes people more likely to reject capitalism. Let's take a look at their link. This is link turn by link turn by continuing to perpetuate this idea of capitalism, then people are more likely to reject capitalism. At that point, we're upholding better than they are. Now let's take a look.
You want to say if we keep this classism idea, then there'll be more.
So by keeping this idea of classism and by showing the people how they're being oppressed, that leads to a more likely acceptance of a peaceful form of government. Now, at that point, they have no access to extinction. They would actually be causing extinction because people would be rejecting their plans. Cool. Now, let's take a look at their third advantage. Uniqueness turn. This is good. The fact that minorities are being pushed to the periphery then allows them to realize, oh shit, this is pretty bad. We should probably do something about it. At which point they're more likely to reject capitalism. Link. Plan passes more. Yeah.
You said it with slides of fire.
Exactly. Okay. Now let's take a look here at the link. Link turn classism good. Now let's take a look at their impact of dehumanization. This sudden revolt of socialist democracy, whatever, would lead to more dehumanization because the revolutions are inherently dehumanizing. Impact turn of poverty. Poverty good. It leads to people rejecting capitalism. We win.
Okay.
And your speech for you win.
Alright, it'll be object fiat, shouldn't take one. Object fiat tricot.
Hold on.
I think I do object
Same order.
Fiat tricot contention.
Oh, just put all your pens up. I didn't.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, one more time.
Framework.
Same order.
Same one.
Object fiat tricot. Contention, case, and order.
Framework.
I'm going to anger Bradford briefly and ask you a question. Where did you get object fiat?
He's been reading daily.
You said my name was Bradford.
So
So
he's
it's
on
on
Bradford
Bradford.
by
Oh!
question.
He has
Yeah,
this
they're
little
reading
book that he has a bunch of theory arguments in that he's been writing down. Is that what you guys?
That's not a little book.
Was it
It's a
really
part-
good idea.
No, it's a
No,
little
it's his,
book I
it's his
have.
little
Oh,
book.
really?
I'm writing my own
He's
book.
making his own.
It's a really good idea. I'm gonna go visit the library or the bookstore after this
Okay,
round.
object, fiat, tricot, contention, then framework, plan, etc. Make sure
In
you
other
hit,
words, same word.
make sure you hit frame points.
Yeah, make sure I hit
Baby,
point A,
come
so
back.
it's just gonna
You
be
can
really
play.
fun.
Oh,
Okay, let's go.
yeah,
Starting with the interpretation on object fiat, he says that we're fiating, on the violation, he actually says that we're fiating a mindset, but at the point we're not fiating a mindset, there's no violation here. Furthermore, there's no a priori or any reason to prefer this voting issue on get above anything else on the sheet, which means that it's going to be the last thing you'll ever assess in the round, which means that you'll never assess it in any case. But furthermore, let's get back up to the interpretation where he talks about basically you can't be fiating a mindset, you must fiat objective things. And the problem with this is that the fact that we're not fiating a mindset, two, we're fiating a social implementation, which does not mean that there needs to be a mindset change. They bring this up in the revolution points, and we'll talk about why their terms are actually good things for us in any case. But let's move on to the tricot argument. Yeah. No framework on this either, so I don't need to provide a competing interpretation on either of these sheets. You're going to be being up through reasonability. If you reasonably believe the fact that I'm not abusing fiat, that means you're going to be preferring us. Moving on to the tricot argument. The first argument is that we meet the fact that they say that fact must encompass whether it is true or not. We can use the policy round as a means to just to talk about the differences between democratic socialism and free market capitalism in a safer way for the debate space. And furthermore, in terms of policy making, I can in terms of policy making, he says that it doesn't encompass fact. We'll talk about how this just simply isn't true. But if they can, but even if a policy is or is not true by their own definition, even if the policy isn't true, it means the policy is still the best word away because it still encompasses it. They don't dispute. Let's move on to the grammar standard. Basically, the grammar of the resolution, they say it's a fact round, but the grammar in the resolution is basically. Let's go framers intent. Turn on framers intent. They say that framers intent. They also said the framer doesn't matter, but at the point when Ryan Guy is the framer and said specifically that we're going to use this to practice running fact/value rounds as policy rounds, means you're probably going to be preferring framers intent for us, which is just going to be a counter standard that tears them apart. And this is going to be viewed through competing interpretations, so you're going to be preferring the counter standard.
and Ryan's first policy.
Yeah, and moving on to the voters on a priori. This can be an a priori sheet, but you're not going to be voting for the negative on this. Furthermore, on fairness, we're completely fair for the round. Point we're going to use the most inclusive style of debate, which is policy, because it's the most familiar to us as Northern California debaters. Moving on to education, it's the most advantageous way for us to expand our education, considering we're looking through a lens of policy, which encompasses all the things in your question.
What is free market capitalism?
What does this have to do with the theory sheet?
What is free market capitalism?
I'm going to go into contention one. The first,
Competing interpretations.
what?
Competing interpretations.
I said that we were putting competing interpretations on.
Just cross-apply the first
You know
point of
what
our
I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
our framework onto this. Cross-apply framework is the answer to competing interpretations.
I remember
Is
competing interpretation because I flowed down disability.
that's the first sheet. Second sheet is competing
You have
interpretation.
to
So
write
I
down
don't
the
stand
way
here.
I'm
Yeah.
I flowed you as saying no competing interpretation, so you don't have to provide one. Like they didn't argue.
That's
That was on the first sheet. Second sheet's competing
Okay.
interpretations.
Okay.
Contention one. They say that free market capitalism is the only way to deconstruct, but as you see, free market capitalism exists in status quo, and this means that this is not actually a way to deconstruct the mindset that is currently existing, which means that they're not actually rejecting capitalism. Furthermore, there's no value being placed by the negative team. Yet again, another failure in their negative case, which means that at the point when they have no value, no tieback, that means their contention falls flat on its face and has absolutely no weight within this round because they do not tie back to a value which we can tangibly conceive, which means that at this point that they don't even provide you with a preponderance of evidence reason as to why to prefer their warrants that they bring up. But furthermore, the Bolshevik revolution was a unique instance in which the people needed something to implement, even though it fell apart at the end. It ultimately ended up being net beneficial for them in the end of the day. So let's move on to the topic case. You crucially drop sub-point 1 of the framework. Fiat is an illusory mechanism, which means that even if your arguments about the fact that the policy isn't real means the fact that you drop this framework means that the fiat that we have made in this round is completely valid, and the fact that you drop this means that we have a 100% chance of solvency on plan on the definitions. They said that we can counter your definitions. We don't disagree that you can contest our definitions. However, they don't run a topicality here, so there's no reason to be giving this argument anyway. Furthermore, he just says that competitive equity is not true, so just extend the competitive equity argument across. At this point, the competitive equity be in the rounds, basically based on the fact that they would run an untopical advocacy to counteract ours in order to skew away half ground, which they're not doing, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, moving on to the policy, they say that it's bullshit and that policy is not always factual. But look at the argument I made on the TRICOP before about how the fact allows us to debate whether what it is or is not factual, which means that policy encompasses this ability as well, because there is unfactual and factual policy that is being made, which means that there is the ability for us to debate both of these. And furthermore, on the ethical obligation, they said that we just don't do this, but at the point where we're completely rejecting free market capitalism, the post-claim is you're probably going to be preferring us on roll of the ballot on face value, which should just be an auto win for. And last, extend across sub point 6 about deconstructing capitalism being a good thing. Moving on to the first advantage, their only argument here is a term that creates a violent revolution. Violent revolution, good. This is a turn back. Violent revolution actually means that there's a better way to deconstruct capitalism, and even if democratic socialism isn't the right way to go, it means that capitalism will still be rejected, which means we're still fulfilling the role of the ballot, which means that you're always going to be preferring us on this. They say there's no internal link, that this caused the impacts of dehumanization, but in some propensity over the time frame, you'll still end up solving for the dehumanization in the long run. Moving on to the second advantage of their argument, the first is that the uniqueness is good, and that the fact that the state entrenches capitalism, but cross-player answers the basically capitalism being bad and the ethical obligation. Pull across framework sub point 6 here, this is going to actually cross-apply and check back to the fact that capitalism is always going to be a bad thing. Moving on to the term here is to basically continue to participate in capitalism, mean people are more likely to reject. Okay, first of all, this isn't true. As you see, cross-apply answers from before about how we're participating in free market capitalism, this isn't going, and we haven't rejected it so far, which means that we are the only team fulfilling the role of the ballot, which they don't dispute should be the role of the ballot, which means you are going to be using this to frame the round in judges. And furthermore, since we're competing, we're winning through this role of the ballot, the fact that we are deconstructing the capitalistic mindset, fulfilling our ethical obligation to do this means that we're always going to be winning on this. And they said that we're going to cause this distinction, but go across our internal link points, they don't dispute these, and the fact that we win at the point when there's no reform the state is the only way to actually check back for this reform, and the extinction of life on Earth, which meaning by destroying the environment, everything dies off. Not just humans. We're talking plant life, animal life, the species, the ability of Earth to carry life can end due to environmental destruction. The Earth could literally just dissipate and float into space. This is a very real possibility. On to the third advantage, they say it's good that minority groups are oppressed and lighting a fire. This is an independent voting issue for the affirmative team. At the point where they say that the minority should be oppressed, even if there's some propensity for them to get out of the problems that they're in, even if like 2 people get out of being oppressed, this doesn't mean that this lighting a fire would work for everybody else. These minorities are going to be uniquely excluded under the negatives. Would have you believe that it is good that they are being excluded from policy making, and this means that there's always going to be failure in society at this point, which means that you're going to be preferring the rhetoric used in round at this point over anything else in the case, which means that you are going to be voting affirmative on this argumentation made by the negative alone. Furthermore, let's get onto the link. They say turning the classism is good, and this is just yet another independent voting issue under the same scope. The language has meaning, and it's going to shape our reality. If we continue saying that classism and minorities should be oppressed within our society, means that you're always going to believe that racism and sexism and other terrible things that happen in our society should exist, which means you're going to be voting down the negative for these arguments alone. Let's move on to the impacts. It says there's going to be more dehumanization post-plan. As I've proven to them, we have a sound link story here, which means that we are going to be absolutely preventing this dehumanization and poverty. And they said that to turn on poverty, that it is a good thing that rejects capitalism. Once again, apply the independent voting issue here, because this is a unique reason why you should vote down the negative team. For the rhetoric being you saying that people should be in poverty, people should be marginalized, people should be identified by their social class. And this means that you're going to always be voting for the affirmative on these issues alone. This will be the most important issues in the round, because the language that carries through the round is going to be above all else, due to the fact that this has real world implications.
Nice.
Not sure.
I don't think so. I think we have to farm ground.
Okay, where do I go?
Alright, so we're gonna start with objects beyond.
Okay, well, I didn't get what you said.
Okay.
Objects via,
Objects beyond. Tricon. Case in order. Filling everything in order again.
Everything in order?
Basically, yes.
I have everything in order.
No, it's a news update.
Okay.
So you're already running the sheet.
What, you're running a new sheet?
Yeah, new sheet. You can.
Cody,
Welcome to Duo.
Watch you do
we
it
have
outside.
headphones.
It's only 10 seconds. There's no Snapchat.
So
I
basically,
don't care.
I'm gonna do my best, and I'm gonna puppy. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So
100%.
Yeah.
If you're watching videos,
we're gonna go through
I
this.
just need interpretation and.
take the headphones.
That's it's not the strongest argument.
Okay.
Take the
That's
headphones.
a no against that.
Let's put the judge before the round.
Wait, what?
New sheet. New sheet. Everything in order.
Hold on.
New sheet.
Hold on.
Oh shit, get right.
No.
Okay, I'll talk about it afterwards.
We can talk about it before.
No.
Run it.
Go, no, thank you.
It's okay.
Let's go.
All right. Ready? Let's go ahead and
All
start.
right. Judge ready? Are you all ready?
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna let's see. First, we're gonna run a procedural here. Interpretation here is that the opposing team must answer at least one question for at least answer one question that the opposing team gives. They clearly rejected our question and continued on with their. The violation here is that they clearly rejected our question and continued on with their speech. They did not answer what a free market was. So the standard here is this is a ground shift here.
Because we do not know exactly what it is that they are talking about here, there is no way for us to make arguments against it.
So because we don't know what the definition what they're actually talking about here, there's no way for us to debate against it, and this clearly destroys the debate in this round
For
here.
example, they mentioned that free market capitalism is the status quo when there is in fact no free market capitalism currently anywhere in the world. At that point, they are clearly skewing us out of ground that we can make by talking about how free market capitalism would solve.
So in this debate, in their speech, they stated that free market capitalism is the status quo, and this is simply not true. The free market capitalism is nowhere in the world as we have today. So that's why we asked this question of the definition here of free market capitalism.
Voters, this is an inquiry.
So this is going to be a priority issue. You're going to look here before anything else in this round here, Judge. If you decide to vote here, this is going to be an automatic win for the negative team, and there's going to be no other discussion about any other points made. Fairness point here. It's simply not fair that they do not answer our question here, and
It's clearly stating this grounds is internal into fairness.
our ground point here is an internal link to our fairness voter issue here.
Grounds lead to clash, which lead to education, and by stealing our ground, we are clearly stealing
Grounds
out of our
in
education.
this debate lead to clash, which leads to further education on the specific topics that we're talking about in the debate space here. This, if we don't have this clash, this is going to lead to everyone's education being heard, not only the debaters in this round, the judge, and everyone else present in the round. It's also going to have further effects down the road in the real world. A big issue here that we have with this no question, with the enemy opposing team not answering our question here is that everything that we're talking about in the round is possible to happen. There could be nuclear war. There could be all these impacts that we come up with. But what's happening in this round is that our voice is being silenced. They clearly brush over our question, and this is a real problem that happened in this debate. There's no getting around that. This happened in this debate in our debate space here.
So let's move on to objects beyond.
So next we're going to be moving on to
They
object.
are clearly fiating a mindset. The point where they say that
They
they
state
can get
that
people to
in this
read
debate, they state
capitalism.
that they're not fiating this capitalistic mindset, or is that?
They are clearly fiating a mindset at the point at which they say they're going to make people reject capitalism or they're rejecting capitalism. They're fiating a change in mindset. They don't address our standards, so you can pull them across, you can flow them
Okay,
through our
so,
voters. They are clearly fiating
They're
a
clearly
mindset.
fiating a mindset here. They say that they are, but they have to get there to be able to.
They said they're changing the
They have to
mindset
be able to get
17 times last speech.
They said that they
Are
were
changing the
changing a
mindset of capitalism.
mindset for capitalism 17 times in the last speech.
At that point,
They-
they are clearly fiating a mindset.
At that point, they're clearly fiating this mindset.
So
here.
extend across all these standards,
So extend across the standards on this object fiat sheet here.
extend across
And-
the voters. This is going to be
and also
the
the
most
voters.
important voting issue of the
This-
entire round.
Below the new sheet that we have made, this is going to be the next highest voting issue that you're going to look at in this.
Because
in
we're
this
doing
round.
this debate for education, we're doing it for all these reasons,
If-
but without an actual debate which we cannot have since they're fiating a mindset at which point they're going to win every time, there's no point to debate.
If Judge, if you allow this mindset fiat to fly in this round, this is going to lead to the collapse of debate, and we're no longer going to be able to have fair debates in the debate space here.
All right, so on the independent voting issues, it's okay.
On the independent voting issues,
This is an independent reason to vote for the negative.
this is an independent reason to vote for the negative. in this
They're
debate.
saying that we're having real world impacts. That's their words. At that point, if we can get people to reject capitalism in the real world through this rhetoric,
They're saying that we're
Question.
trying to get people to
on the independent voter issues. Just clearly stated. Keep up.
we're okay. What are you saying?
Sorry. At the point, if we can get people's mindsets to change, which they said we could, through this rhetoric,
If we can get people's mindset to change through this rhetoric that they stated themselves,
if we can be increasing the capitalism in the real world,
if we can increase capitalism in the real world, it's going to lead to the destruction of capitalism itself, because people are going to have this. They're going to realize the problem instead of it being forced upon them, like what happened in the Russian Revolution.
at that
Now,
point,
we're not saying that this is going to be a perfect thing that's going to happen. This is going to have less problems than the Russian Revolution. They're stating that yes, there's going to be less. It's going to be a less bloody revolution, as my partner has already stated.
so on the tripod sheet, sorry guys, the only offense put on him is on the framer's intent. They are trying to say that Ryan Guy is a framer. We all know he gets his resolutions elsewhere. He does not make up his own
So,
resolutions.
The only offense that was put on the sheet was under the framer's intent. They stated that Ryan Guy was the framer of this, but we all know that he gets his resolutions from outside sources, not from himself. Especially if he has a printed off sheet of paper that he brought into round.
I know it. You know it. Everybody knows it.
Obviously he did not think of these things off on his own.
At that point, the only way to evaluate framer's intent is the grammar of is.
That way, the only way we should be looking at this framer's intent is through the grammar of is.
At that
So
point,
you're
they
going to
drop
be
our
carrying
other standards.
you're going to be carrying across the understanders and voters on this issue.
Question before we get the same sheet run against us.
Who's a framer?
Doesn't matter.
Who is a framer?
Doesn't matter.
A framer is a person who creates the idea.
He said who, not what.
Moving on.
So where are we content in one?
So it's all that.
Yeah.
They said cross-part tripod sheet. So
All right. So at this point, you have the independent voters, which
we're just going to
we're just going to be
Okay,
collapsed
so-
at this point.
now you want to just speak up?
So we have
Is that
object fiat,
calculus?
tricop.
I'm totally with that.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so in this debate, you're going to be looking at two of the procedurals right here. You're going to look at the new sheet that we created, the one question procedural that where they need to ask this question. This is a real world issue, and this was a voice. Our voices were silenced in this debate space. And you're also going to be looking at this object fiat sheet. In the other side.
That was messy.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we have to do, but that's basically our collapse. So we fix them across the case.
No, but I have to answer other things too.
I'm gonna say that thing the judges sometimes say, which is
He voted for it.
shine a light.
I'll wait until the rebuttal to answer
Is
that.
it my turn?
No,
Whose turn is it?
You got it, table?
How much time do I have for this speech? Is it 4?
4
minutes.
Get debate keeper app. It's awesome.
There's an app for it?
Yeah. And different styles.
30
of
plus
debate.
forms of debate.
Okay, sorry. You need to focus on the round.
Like what?
Where's the T?
The one we just put on this.
I mean, the theory. The one question.
Instructions.
No, I just
Oh, it's on the back of here somewhere.
so
Here's tricop.
If you want to burn time
Okay,
getting
sorry.
organized,
hot minute.
Judge, today you're going to be voting for the affirmative. At the point at which they conceded that.
You mean
We're
negative?
negative. We're negative.
Can you stop interrupting other people's speeches?
Run a procedural.
Judge, today you're going to be voting for the negative. You're going to be voting, first of all, on the theory sheet. They completely skewed us out of our education by not answering our question. That question would have essentially framed the entire round. At the point I would say they did not meet their own burden of defining words when they did not define what free market capitalism was, despite us actually giving them an opportunity to do so in a point of information. Then you're going to be voting for the negative on this theory sheet.
Point of order.
So,
You go first.
saying that we have to give specific definitions for things in round is a completely new argument. I get the taking the question, but having to define your definitions is completely new.
I'm extending across his point on the framework. He made the argument, not me.
Under consideration.
Come on. You have to disclose. You can change the view of the round.
They can challenge parametricism.
You have to
not
disclose.
definitions.
I haven't made a decision yet, Cody.
You have to disclose.
I haven't made a decision yet. I cannot disclose the decision.
Cody,
that I
shut
have
up.
been
Right
making.
now.
Yeah,
So-
Cody, shut up.
Under consideration.
Consideration's fine.
Now let's take a look here at object fiat. At the point their only way of having solvency is changing the mindset, which they do through the theoretical implementation of fiat. They are clearly fiating this mindset. At that point, there is no point in us actually going on case. There's no point of us debating because they can simply say they win by fiating this mindset. At that point, when they did not address our standards, you're going to be pulling them across, and you're going to be voting them down for this. This is clear abuse. At that point, when they are fiating this mindset, and they didn't even address this, they are going to be taking the L, as they say. Now, on the Tricom, as my partner mentioned, Ryan Guy is not a framer. Ryan Guy gets it from the internet. I know it, you know it, everybody knows it. At that point,
He's code.
either way, you're going to be voting for the affirmative, negative on this. Yeah. Either way, they did not address our standards. You're going to be pulling those across. You're going to be voting them down for this. Now, let's take a look at the other reasons that you're going to be voting for the negative. They say that we have real-world impacts through our rhetoric on the independent voters. If that's true, they don't address how increasing capitalism then leads to a more peaceful society. You can extend across that argumentation onto this rhetoric by increasing classism, by increasing the marginalization of these minorities. These minorities are going to realize that they are being played by the quote-unquote top 1%. At that point, it is more likely that they will reject the current system that they are under, and they will peacefully adopt a more peaceful form of government. They say that we garner real-world impacts from this. You're going to be considering those above all other impacts. Because if we can actually make this happen in the real world, per their own words, then you're going to obviously be voting for the negative on this. Now, they mentioned that not all minorities will benefit. All minorities are obviously going to benefit. If you change the form of society, there's a clear, what's it called? Rider effect on this. Essentially, even if only 5% of the minorities change to the society to a more peaceful society, all minorities are obviously going to benefit because they live in this society.
Point of order. Saying that even if what did you say, 5% of minorities change this mindset, that it will change for all minorities is completely new argumentation.
It's an example in which I am using to illustrate the point I made previously on how minorities will then rise and change society into a more peaceful society.
Point well taken.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, at the point in which we're garnering real-world impacts, if we can cause this to happen in the real world, you're going to be voting for us. You're going to be voting for us, first of all, on the theory, and second of all, on these impacts, which they completely conceded that we have the ability to solve. They cannot solve for anything. Vote neg. Doesn't matter.
going to be going in this same order: new sheet, object fiat, tricot, contention, case in order. Kind of.
Do you want me to flow anything on a separate sheet, like analysis or anything like that?
You can do what you want.
I don't think you particularly need to, but if you have the inclination to, go ahead. I'm not going to tell the judge what to do.
Oh shit.
Okay, is everyone ready?
Yep.
It's getting really hot in
Interesting.
here. Oh my gosh. I told you it was. Okay. So, is everyone ready? Alright, let's begin. To specifically look at this new sheet, let's look at it on the interpretation. It's bad interpretation because it bounds
Point of
only
order.
our team. What?
Saying it's a bad interpretation is an argument.
This procedural sheet was brought up in the MO speech. This is our only chance to respond to it.
Point not well taken.
Thank you. It's a bad interpretation. This is a reverse voting issue because they're trying to mute the speech that we have, which is specifically what they're doing in this interpretation by only saying that their team is allowed to take one question. They're excluding our team from being able to take that specific question. In the interpretation, we lose ground if they're the only team that's allowed to ask one question because their interpretation is so exclusive of our team. They specifically turns this back on them. Why you're going to be voting against them on this sheet? The rhetoric imposed by the negative team is specifically unfair within this procedural sheet in particular because it excludes us just like the rhetoric does on the entire flow that you can see, which I'm going to be getting to now. On the objective fiat, we are not fiating a mindset because we're fiating a plan. The plan text is to impose democratic socialism across the state. Just because my partner comes up and says, because we are fiating this will happen, doesn't mean that it's 100% chance of it happening. It says there's a big chance of it happening. Therefore, we're not fiating the mindset. We're just saying that mindset will occur because of the likelihood of it occurring post our plan happening, which is not a fiat of the mindset. We're fiating a social action, which will then a social implementation. What?
He did.
Sorry, continue.
Fiating a social implementation, not a mindset. The mindset will change once the actual institution of this new plan changes. Therefore, you're not going to be voting on the sheet because there's nothing to look at here. We meet this. The voter. They put a new voter that said this is the most important issue, but by looking at this over the issue of the rhetoric within the round, it's another turn against them that the rhetoric in the round causes worse real-world issues within the debate space because we need to be looking at the real-world issue that comes from the rhetoric of the negative team. Looking at the tricot in particular, he gets up in his rebuttal and says, I know it, you know it, everyone knows it. This is a direct quote from Donald Trump, which is the rhetoric that's going to turn them back on their own debate because Donald Trump is the leading image of the oppression that's occurring to the minority groups. All of the mindset that's occurring within the status quo of the conservative party, of the parties within the status quo that's oppressing the minority groups comes directly from the leader, the Donald Trump, during his election, which means that this is a specific link back to why you're going to be voting for the affirmative team today because the rhetoric is harmful against the minorities in the real world. What?
Get the case and just extend it across the
Case. Extend across my partner's articulation about the rhetoric used by the negative team because he specifically put that this voting issue is
Go back. Extend across all of case. You're missing the fact that they dropped all my arguments. So we get to 100% solvency.
Extend across the entire case because they completely dropped all arguments in the MO speech and we extended it through the entire, which means we have solvency and we have the means to solve for all the impacts within this debate, which means even on magnitude alone, you're going to be voting for the affirmative team. But look specifically at the rhetoric, the rhetoric terms that my partner put on the individual terms on each of the advantages. The rhetoric used by the negative team is specifically why you're going to be preferring the affirmative team today because the rhetoric specifically harms them by saying that minority groups should be marginalized, particularly because it quote-unquote lights a fire. But the marginalization of the minority groups is the specific reason why you're going to be voting for the alternative team because we're allowing for a means to end capitalism by not oppressing minority groups, by implementing a democratic socialism which doesn't oppress them, leaving the destruction of capitalism to ensue anyway. So you're going to be preferring us on the roll of the ballot because we are the best means to end capitalism without oppressing or leaving an oppressive nature behind like the negative team does. And specifically, you're going to be voting for the extension that my partner made that each of these specific turns is the biggest impact in the round that you're going to be voting on. This went dropped, which means that this is going to be the first thing you're going to look at. So each of these arguments on the three advantages are going to be the thing you're going to be looking at first above all other sheets because it went dropped. We answered all of their points of saying that their quote-unquote impacts are the biggest ones, but at the point where they drop ours, it means you're going to be looking at here first because it's the unique instance where they are causing real world impacts to ensue, and at the point where you can vote for the affirmative team to deconstruct the mindset that the negative team is putting forward, that marginalizing and dehumanizing the minority populations is okay, is going to solve much better than any of the hypothetical implementations that we're putting into the plan. But regardless, the hypothetical implementation of the plan is still going to solve at the point where they drop the entire affirmative case. So no matter what sheet you look on here, you're going to be voting for the affirmative team, because not only do we meet the burden set forth by the resolution, but we even meet each of their individual procedural sheets by not implementing a fiat on the mindset, but by fiating a social movement in the governmental systems worldwide, thus leading to the actions by the people. We're not fiating that the people will do this, but there's a drastic chance that it will happen at the point where they drop this chance of happening. It's a 100% chance of it happening because it went dropped, which means that we have a 100% probability of this ensuing, even if we don't fiat that it will ensue, which means we're not fiating the mindset, but the mindset will ensue anyways, which is going to lead to the deconstruction of capitalism entirely, which is why you're going to be voting for the affirmative team.
Hey, Abel.